know I shouldn't be saying this, but I've got a secret sign that I give to my guest director, Kim, after an interview to both say that that was a great guest and to also put him or her on our favored guest list. Now, my guest today is not only a great person to chat with, but also straightforward and eager to help you, my viewers and listeners, manage these stressful times. You've heard the song, Love is All Around Us. That's the hit song, but stress is certainly all around us, and that's certainly less thrilling, more chilling. Let's go to the author whose book on stress has been an Amazon bestseller, and he's one of my inner cohort of favored guests. It's welcome back, Professor Pete Alexander. Welcome, Pete.
Thank you, Malcolm, and thank you so much for having me back on the show. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, I'm not going to tell you what the secret sign was to Kim, man, but yeah, we were so delighted to have you back. Pete, I wanted you to return and be on another of our top shows, this time the Conscious Matters show, as my personal belief is that awareness of stress amongst themselves and their teams is the hallmark of a conscious leader. What's your thoughts here?
Well, that's absolutely, Malcolm. A conscious leader understands that without their mental and physical health, all else doesn't matter. They understand that if they're sick and lying in bed, as you know, if we think about it, whenever we were really, really sick, did we want to do anything other than lying in bed? They're no good to their family, coworkers, business, you name it. So health is paramount.
I totally agree with you. Now, let's dive straight into stress. It's not a simple subject, is it? It comes in many guises, isn't it?
That's correct. So there's both good stress and bad stress. Good stress, it's also known as eustress. That is the kind of stress that we need to get things done. So imagine we're working on something that we really enjoy. That is something that's going to motivate us to get it done on time, to do good quality work. Those kinds of stress are perfectly fine. What we want to avoid is the bad stress, also known as distress. That usually falls between things about that happen in the past or in the future. So in the past, it's similar to ruminating about something that we either said or did to someone else, and we just beat ourselves up or we worry about that. That's a real negative type of stress that can eat us up. The other, in the future, it's typically anxiety. It's worrying about something in the future that hasn't happened yet. We worry about it, and we literally manifest a negative outcome because we stress and are so anxious about something that hasn't happened instead of thinking about it from a more positive standpoint. So, the listeners should really think about that and say, don't think that just stress by itself. There is good stress. And so if you're doing things that you like and you're motivated to get them done and you're under a tight deadline, that's okay. But if you are anxious or you are ruminating about something in the past, those are the things that you really have to look and try and avoid.
Yeah, excellent. Yes, I must admit, I do like good stress. It's exciting before you're doing a show or whatever it may be. Now, business leaders I've met often seem oblivious to the fact that they themselves are under stress. They just think it comes with the job. What do you say to people like that? And what telltale signs should they look out for?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's looking for the obvious mental and physical warning signs. So mentally, it might be something like having difficulty focusing. Where you used to be able to just get things done and you're able to concentrate very well. And now all of a sudden you are having a lot of difficulty concentrating. That is going to be something that is you're an early sign that you're mentally stressed. If you have drug and or alcohol addiction, that is actually a sign of mental stress because you're trying to medicate something to make yourself feel better. So those are commonly two that I always recommend. If something like that is happening, take a look at that, because your body is telling you that it's problematic from your mind. Physically, it could be something as simple as your shoulders or back having a lot of stiffness, because what we do is when we're stressed and we're at our desks, we hunch over for long periods of time. And so that is a classical one. But also things like, let's say that your stomach is not well and no amount of Pepto-Bismol is taking care of the effects, or you're reaching for aspirin or some sort of Tylenol, etc., every day or every other day instead of occasionally, because your headaches are continuously happening. Those are classic signs that you're physically stressed. And so what I always recommend to people is that our bodies and our minds are going to tell us, is going to warn us over and over again. And if you ignore those signs, what's going to happen is your body at some point is going to break down. And you do not want to get to the point of burnout, because you have to physically reverse that. And that is a very difficult thing. For me personally, I ended up with stress-induced diabetes because I didn't listen to my body, what stress was doing to it. So it's really important. Again, going back to what we talked about the importance of our health.
True. Now, look, stress is often regarded, though, in the corporate world as a sign of weakness, which to my mind is old thinking, but it happens. Are companies really becoming more conscious and caring with their people, or can admitting to stress still be seen as career damaging? How should an employee with stress act, do you think?
It's a really good question. I think it all depends on the organization. If the organization is enlightened and understands that its greatest resource is its people, then an employee should be able to go to their supervisor or human resources person and get help. Because obviously the organization, the supervisor, it's a good employee. They're going to want to make sure that that employee gets their help because that person is valued. If, however, they are working at an organization that churns and burns its employees, then I would suggest to that employee to look for another company to work for. Once again, health is just too important to risk working for an organization that doesn't appreciate them.
I'm totally with you. I wish that had happened many, many years ago. No, just before we move on to my next question, Pete, I just want to remind my viewers and listeners of your URL, your website. Viewers, it's on the screen behind me. You see it's petealexander.com. And I'll just say that again for listeners. Pete, P-E-T-E, short for Peter, Pete Alexander, all one word, .com. So tell us about your book. What caused you to write it and who is it aimed at?
Well, talking about the stress. So back in 2008, I had a perfect storm of stressful activities that caused me to get diagnosed with stress-induced diabetes. But I didn't listen to my body about what stress was doing to it. Instead, I continued to burn the candle at both ends for another 10 years until I ended up in the emergency room and then an extended stay in ICU with a severe case of diabetic ketoacidosis. And for your listeners who don't know what that is, basically my body was eating itself alive because of my stress. It was nuts. And in fact, I was in the ICU on my second day in ICU, and I had my phone, and I got a text at I think it was like 6 a.m. from my boss at the time, and she asked me, you have a webinar you need to run at 8 o'clock. What are you going to do about it? And it was like, here I am trying to do everything I can on my phone to try and reschedule that webinar. And the nurse comes to me, is checking my blood every half an hour. And she had seen my blood when I had first been admitted to the hospital was so high that the medical grade glucometers, the lab couldn't even read it. So it was easily 8 to 10 times higher than it should have been. And it finally was coming back down into more reasonable numbers. And as she took the blood, my blood reading, my blood sugars had shot straight back up. And she just says, as a matter of factly, she says, you realize that that's what put you in this hospital bed in the first place. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh. And so I really did some soul searching. And I decided that I needed to take care of my health, because if I don't, I'm not going to be around much longer. So I got out of the hospital. I resigned from the job. And then I started applying different tools and techniques, seeing what would work and what wouldn't. I noticed that there were a lot of resources out there that talk about an individual technique, like, let's say, meditation or yoga or deep breathing. But the reality is, most people these days are so time crunched that they really only have a few minutes that to try and apply something, because it's, typically we're walking into a meeting or a difficult discussion that's stressing us out, and we just we have a couple minutes where we can try something. So what I decided to do was create this book that's aimed at hard driving leaders who only have a few minutes to give something a try. That if it works, wonderful. If it doesn't work, try something else, because it's only a couple of minutes. And once you find a few techniques that really work for you, if you utilize those over and over again, you will better protect your health and handle challenging situations with grace.
Brilliant, brilliant. And I'm totally with you, because the one good thing about the pandemic, I mean, only one good thing is I'm not driving 20,000 miles a year now. And my angina and all that was causing me a huge amount of problems. Now I'm much more calm, much more relaxed. It's my wife that's got the problems with me still around every day. Okay, Pete, let me give you a scenario poser. Let's assume I'm the CEO of, say, a busy technology company with my teams working hard to keep clients going in this busy pandemic time. I've watched Professor Pete on this BVTV show, and I think, I'm a caring leader. I want to take action in my business to be stress supportive to my people. But how and where do I start? How do I create the right culture of support? Over to you, Pete.
That's a really good question. There's several things, but first one that comes to my mind would be have the CEO sign up his team for. I just started this 30-day Stress Buster challenge. Just completed the first one with a group of business leaders, and what it's designed to do is in 5 minutes or less per day, they go online either from their computer or from their phones, and they learn new habits to effectively handle stress in a supportive, fun, and interactive environment. There's competition to get points for doing good things for themselves, and it's really, really fun to learn new habits. And what his science has shown is that to form a new habit, we need to do it at least 21 days in a row. And so this program is designed to give you those new habits, and you try one. If it works for you, great. You try a different one, you try it, and you continue to use it. Once you find something, the whole goal is to find at least one technique that'll help you, and just utilize that over and over and over again. So that would be my first recommendation, because it's a very cost-effective way for the entire team to go through it and be able to support each other in a very collaborative and fun way.
I like that. What happens if a leader doesn't tackle stress in his or her business? I mean, I know the obvious, the person will be off work and that's costly, but what are the other impacts that perhaps we don't think about or even know about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, obviously I told you about what happened to me, and for my mantra, when you lose your health, nothing else matters. But let me give you another example. My friend Ken, who I met in high school, we were best friends in high school. We served as each other's best man at our weddings, and we also supported each other as proud fathers. 30 years, if you fast forward 30 years, he was struggling in both his personal and professional life. And he too ended up in the emergency room, but in his case, it was with intestinal cancer. And the doctors had to remove over 2/3 of his intestines. And then he had to undergo a an extreme chemotherapy regimen. And he would go through chemotherapy for 3 weeks, and then he'd have a week off, and then 3 weeks, and then he would have a week off. And so during the week off, we would either get together in person or we would talk on the phone. And every time we talked, he told me that he was absolutely convinced that stress caused his cancer. And 2 weeks before his 49th birthday, he passed away because of his disease. And I miss him. I pretty much think about him every day. And the fact of the matter is, had he been able to be listening to his body more and do something about that stress, he would have been able to, I assume, avoid going through the what he did with the cancer. And unfortunately, he just did not have any energy or antibodies to fight off the disease once through the chemotherapy. And it's sad. It really is. It was a shock to myself, shock to his family. And and I think about that, and it's just, I try and warn people, because it's too easy for us to say, yeah, I'll take care of my health, and then I'll get to it. I'll get to it. You have to make it a priority, because no one else can make that a priority for you. You have to do it yourself.
Pete, thanks for that very personal and poignant story. Now, how should a company go about telling the world that it provides a culture of care? I think it would attract the right type of recruits, by the way, but it's obviously a sensitive thing to say in any recruitment advert or any conversation, is it? Or is it?
If you position it the right way, I think it's a real win for the organization. I would suggest that they refer to their offerings as wellness offerings as part of their benefit package. They could discuss how they invest in programs that help individuals deal with challenging situations. All organizations, they cause stress to their employees in various ways, so they can't avoid that. But those organizations that help their employees effectively deal with their stress will be the ones that ultimately succeed. And so a recruit would know that, okay, I'm going to be working hard, and if something goes sideways for me, the organization is going to back me up and provide me with the resources I need to be healthy and mentally, physically, etc. So that's I would just talk about the wellness offerings and be able to make the employees position themselves that they know that they can't be successful without healthy employees.
Well said. I quite agree. Totally agree there. I think it may you stand out as well from the rest and make a difference. Pete, as we gratefully rush into 2021, I say that not without wishing my life away, but gratefully rush into 2021 and hopefully leave the gloom of 2020 behind. What 3 New Year's resolutions do you think the conscious leader should have on his or her list for his or her team?
Sure. I love this question, because I gave it a lot of thought. And I would say, these are the 3 that not only, how we do New Year's resolutions and then all of a sudden forget them a few days into the new year. But if these conscious leaders can apply one of these and continue to apply one of these, I think it's going to be a game changer for them. The first one is resist the need to be liked. I tell this to everybody. It's simply impossible to please everyone, because we are not pizza.
Yeah.
we're just not. So rather than spending all that energy on trying to win over people that don't like you for whatever reason, spend that energy on more positive relationships with people who like you for who you are. It just makes total sense. The second one would be, don't make a situation all about you. So if someone says or does something that negatively affects you, don't take it personally. The other person's actions are typically a reflection of themselves, not you. So instead of assuming that that other person intentionally affected you and letting that negative emotion fester inside of us, because that is just negative energy, consider forgiving them instead to reduce or eliminate the negative emotion that you're feeling. So what I do is whenever I encounter somebody who negatively affected me in some way, what I'll do is I imagine that person standing in front of me. I just do this in my head. I imagine that person standing in front of me and I say, I forgive you. Please forgive me too. It's just it's a two-way street, even if you don't feel like there's anything that you did to that person. And then you imagine that person acknowledging that, a nod of the head or a shaking of the hands or whatever it happens to be in your mind that indicates that, or even a hug if it's a family member that you're close to. Those kind of things can really help reduce the stress and of that negative emotion festering inside of you. And the last thing that I highly recommend is for a resolution is we should all minimize our contact with negative or toxic people. Life is just too short to spend it around negative people. So why waste our energy, right? I mean, it's just like the people we talked about that were not pizza, that don't like you. Spending time with negative people is a complete energy suck, Malcolm. They're typically seeking reactions, and if they don't get one from you, they'll go on to somebody else who will engage with them. So by minimizing the contact with negative people, we reserve our energy for more positive people in our life.
Not only is there some great advice for the conscious leader there, but I think there's some great advice for anybody who's got relatives coming over the holiday period.
That's exactly why I put that.
Excellent. And as we do go into 2021, Pete, and sadly, stress will not be going away. So, but you'll be coming back. I hope so. Pete Alexander, thank you for a great interview. And I really do love your inspiration.
Well, Malcolm, thank you again for having me on the show. It's been a pleasure, and I absolutely love your show.